Psychology of people who have been through too much in life. Some people don't talk about what they've been through. They carry it quietly. You see it in the way they stay calm during chaos, or how they don't get excited too easily anymore. Too much has already happened. Loss, disappointment, pressure, survival. Not once, but over and over. And now even small things feel heavy. I've noticed that people like this aren't weak. They're tired in a deep, invisible way. They've learned to keep going without expecting comfort. They function, they help others, but inside something is always on guard. Psychiatrist Viktor Frankl wrote in Man's Search for Meaning, "When we are no longer able to change a situation, we are challenged to change ourselves." That line explains so much. After too much pain, people don't just react differently, they become different. This is the psychology of those who have been through too much. Not broken, not dramatic, just shaped by more than most will ever see. Number 1. When endurance becomes invisible strength. People who have gone through too much often underestimate themselves because their strength never looked heroic. It looked ordinary. It looked like getting up when no one applauded, solving problems quietly, and learning to function while carrying emotional weight in the background. Psychology calls this adaptive resilience, the ability to keep going under strain without collapsing. Anne Muston describes it in Ordinary Magic as the capacity of a dynamic system to adapt successfully to disturbances that threaten its function. In other words, your steadiness didn't come from being unhurt. It came from learning how to bend without breaking. The problem is that this kind of endurance becomes invisible, even to the person living it. When survival is repeated for years, strength stops feeling like strength and starts feeling like obligation. You may tell yourself that what you went through wasn't that bad, simply because you managed it. I've noticed how often people dismiss their own resilience, because no one ever stopped to name it. But psychology reminds us that endurance is not the absence of pain. It is the presence of adaptation. If you learn to stay calm in chaos, to think ahead when others panicked, or to carry responsibility early in life, those traits didn't appear by accident. They were shaped. Recognizing this doesn't mean glorifying suffering. It means finally giving your nervous system credit for how much it had to learn just to keep you standing. Number 2. The cost of carrying pain without witness. When pain is repeated and rarely acknowledged, the mind learns an unspoken rule: handle it alone. Over time, this creates emotional self-sufficiency, but also emotional isolation. Psychology shows that unexpressed pain doesn't disappear. It goes inward. Carl Rogers wrote in On Becoming a Person, "What is most personal is most universal," pointing to the truth that emotions need recognition to soften, not suppression to survive. People who have been through too much often become highly functional, yet internally exhausted. They learned early that there was no space to fall apart, so feelings were postponed, minimized, or managed privately. I've seen how this creates a quiet loneliness, not from lack of people but from lack of emotional witnessing. Modern psychology emphasizes that being seen is not a luxury, it's a regulatory need. Without validation, the nervous system stays alert, scanning for the next demand. Over time, this can show up as emotional numbness, irritability, or a sense of disconnection from joy. None of this means you failed to cope. It means you coped alone. Healing begins not by reliving everything, but by allowing parts of your experience to finally be acknowledged by yourself first. When pain is witnessed, even gently, it no longer has to work so hard to be carried. Number 3. Why you became so self-aware and so hard on yourself. People who endure a lot early or for a long time often develop sharp self-awareness. You learn to read rooms, moods, and subtle shifts in people because it helped you stay safe, avoid conflict, or anticipate problems before they grew. Psychology understands this as heightened attunement, an adaptive skill shaped by necessity. Daniel Goleman notes in Emotional Intelligence that self-awareness is the foundation of emotional intelligence, but what's rarely said is how often this awareness is forged through pressure, not comfort. The cost is that awareness can quietly turn inward and become self-criticism. You may analyze your reactions, question your emotions, or hold yourself to standards you would never demand of someone else. I've noticed how people who survived a lot often believe they must also manage themselves perfectly, as if mistakes are no longer allowed. From a psychological perspective, this isn't perfectionism, it's protection. The mind learned that being vigilant reduced risk, but growth now asks for a shift, using self-awareness for understanding rather than judgment. Awareness was once a shield. It doesn't have to remain a weapon turned inward. Number 4. The nervous system of someone who's been through too much. Long-term stress doesn't just live in memory. It reshapes how the body responds to the world. When life demanded constant alertness, your nervous system adapted to stay ready. Bessel van der Kolk explains in The Body Keeps the Score. The trauma is not the story of something that happened back then. It's the current imprint of that pain on body, brain, and mind. This is why calm can feel unfamiliar, and rest can feel strangely unsafe. People who have gone through too much may startle easily, feel emotionally drained, or withdraw without knowing why. These reactions are not personality flaws. They are biological patterns formed under prolonged strain. I've seen how confusing it can be to feel exhausted, even when life finally slows down. Modern psychology emphasizes regulation over control. Healing isn't forcing yourself to relax. It's gradually training the nervous system that threat is no longer constant. Safety is learned through repetition, not logic. When your body begins to feel safe again, emotions soften naturally, without being pushed. Number 5. Why you struggle to rest even when life is calm. After long periods of emotional strain, rest doesn't automatically feel safe. Psychology explains this through conditioning. Your nervous system learned that calm was temporary, or that stillness meant something bad was coming next. So even when external pressure fades, the inner vigilance remains. Stephen Porges, in The Polyvagal Theory, writes that safety is the treatment, emphasizing that the body must experience safety before it can release defense. Knowing you're safe is not the same as feeling safe. This is why rest can feel uncomfortable, boring, or even anxiety-provoking. You may feel guilty slowing down, or restless, when nothing needs fixing. I've noticed how many people confuse this with laziness or lack of gratitude, when it's actually a nervous system that never learned how to stand down. From a psychological perspective, learning to rest is an active process. It's not collapse, it's retraining. Small moments of calm, repeated without consequence, slowly teach the body that peace doesn't have to be earned or defended. Rest becomes less of a risk and more of a skill, practiced gently instead of forced. Number 6. Turning survival into inner growth, not self-blame. When people look back on how survival shaped them, it's easy to turn insight into accusation. Why am I like this? Becomes a quiet form of self-blame. Psychology offers a different lens. Adaptation is context-dependent. What once kept you functioning may now need adjustment, not rejection. Carl Jung wrote in Modern Man in Search of a Soul, "I am not what happened to me, I am what I choose to become," pointing to growth that builds from experience, not against it. Survival traits, emotional distance, control, independence were not mistakes, they were solutions. I've seen how healing accelerates when people stop fighting these traits and start understanding them. Growth isn't erasing survival, it's updating it. Modern psychology calls this integration. You keep the strength, but loosen the armor. You keep awareness, but add compassion. When survival is met with respect instead of shame, it naturally evolves into something quieter, steadier, and more humane. Number 7. Learning to receive without guilt. For people who have gone through too much, receiving can feel harder than giving. You may accept responsibility easily, but kindness makes you uneasy. Psychology explains this as a learned imbalance. When you became self-reliant early, needing less felt safer than needing others. Over time, independence turned into identity. John Bowlby, the founder of attachment theory, wrote in A Secure Base that all of us from cradle to grave are happiest when life is organized as a series of excursions. from the secure base provided by our attachment figures. When that secure base was unstable or absent, you learn to become your own. The difficulty is that self-sufficiency can quietly block nourishment. Support may feel undeserved, interest, or risky. I've noticed how often people who endured a lot feel guilt when they are cared for, as if rest or help must be justified. From a psychological perspective, learning to receive is not regression, it's regulation. Allowing care does not erase your strength, it completes it. When you let support in, even in small ways, the nervous system learns that connection does not automatically lead to loss or obligation. Receiving becomes an act of trust, not weakness. Conclusion: you are not broken. You are carrying a story that deserves rest. If you've gone through too much, psychology does not ask you to reframe it into something positive or rush toward healing. It asks you to recognize what your mind and body had to do to survive. Many of your patterns, hyper-independence, emotional restraint, constant awareness, are not flaws, they are evidence of intelligence under pressure. Donald Winnicott once wrote in The Maturational Processes and the Facilitate Environment, "It is a joy to be hidden, and a disaster not to be found." For a long time, you may have learned how to stay hidden in plain sight, functioning, coping, enduring. But being found now does not mean being exposed or undone. It means being understood, first, by yourself. I believe healing begins when survival is honored, rather than interrogated. You don't need to become someone else, be whole. You don't need to prove how much you suffered to earn rest. Going through too much already shaped you. Healing is simply the process of letting that shape soften. You are not late. You are not weak. You are someone who adapted deeply and is finally allowed live with less weight than before.